Today we'll be starting with signaling receptors. Let me have my pointer option first. Okay. Now, when we are talking about the receptors, there are broadly two categories of receptors. The first category of receptors are the cell surface receptors. That is, the receptors are present on the surface of the plasma membrane. And the next category are the receptors that are present within the cytoplasm or within the nucleus. So these are intracellular receptors. So let's look at. So this is basically a cell surface receptor. As you can see, the receptor is present on the cell surface and the receptor binds to its ligand. By now, you must have understood what a ligand means. In case of cell surface receptors, majority of the signaling molecules are hydrophilic. And since they are hydrophilic, they are unable to cross the target cell's plasma membrane. And thus they bind to the cell surface receptors, which in turn, once these ligands bind to the receptors, there is a conformational change occurring in the receptors on the cytoplasmic side. And this change generates signals inside the target cell. When we are talking about intracellular receptors, these are small signaling molecules that can diffuse across the plasma membrane. So basically they are hydrophobic in nature and they can diffuse across the plasma membrane, and inside the cytoplasm they can bind to the receptor proteins, or in the nucleus they can bind to the receptor proteins, and the ligand receptor interaction starts, and accordingly we get an output. So thus, on the broader sense, the receptors can be divided on as the cell surface receptors and as intracellular receptors. Just to keep, this is an additional information I'd like to give it to you here only. When small hydrophobic molecules, you can understand when a molecule is hydrophobic, it is insoluble in aqueous solution. So many of these hydrophobic molecules, when traveling through blood, they are carried by proteins known as carrier proteins. The carrier proteins carry these molecules through the bloodstream and other extracellular fluids, and before entering the target cell, they dissociate from these carrier proteins. Now coming to the broader classification of the category of signaling receptors. As the picture suggests, we have 6 categories of receptors shown in this picture. The first is the G protein coupled receptor, followed by the receptor tyrosine kinases. Then we have the receptor guanyl cyclase, gated ion channels. We talked about ion channels also when we did plasma membrane. We had studied there the opening and the closing of the gates. We have the adhesion receptor and we have the nucleus receptor. Coming to the first category, the G protein coupled receptor. In these cases, what happens whenever the ligand binds to the receptor, there is this structure, G protein is present on the cytoplasmic half. And the G protein is activated and it in turn moves through the membrane and activates an enzyme which results in a downstream signaling cascade. I'll be showing you some detailed pictures of how G protein signaling goes on as we move on through the slides. Next, one of the beautiful example of a G protein coupled receptor is the beta adrenergic receptor system that detects epinephrine. Next, we are coming to the receptor tyrosine kinases. As you can see, these plasma membrane receptors are enzyme. When these receptors are activated by its ligand, so these receptors are being activated by its ligand, they catalyze the phosphorylation of several cytosolic or plasma proteins. So on the cytoplasmic side, they may be autophosphorylated. Some residues on these receptors at the cytoplasmic end might be autophosphorylated, and the signaling cascade may go further downstream. And the signaling cascade is this percolated downstream via the kinase cascade. We will be doing the receptor tyrosine kinases also in details because that is a part of your syllabus. A beautiful example of the receptor tyrosine kinase is the insulin receptor and the receptor for the epidermal growth factor, EGFR. The third category of receptor is the receptor guanylyl cyclase. This is also a plasma membrane receptor. The receptor on binding with this ligand, as you can see, the moment the receptor binds with this ligand, the intracellular second messengers are activated. So you see GTP is broken down to cyclic GMP, which then activates a lot of protein kinases that phosphorylate cellular proteins and thereby change their activities. One thing I'd like to mention here, even though that particular picture is quite downstream of the slides I'll be showing, whenever you are seeing the name kinase written after an enzyme, for example, we are seeing receptor tyrosine kinase. In fact, while talking about CGMP, I said they activate protein kinases. That means, remember, these enzymes can add phosphate to substrate. So they react with the substrate, they bind to the substrate and add a phosphate to it. Now, phosphates are energy currencies. So the moment a phosphate is added to the substrate, automatically that particular substrate or the protein is further activated. So this is how the intracellular proteins are activated by addition of phosphates. Now, this is a reversible process. Just like kinase can add phosphate to a substrate, there is another enzyme, phosphatase, that removes phosphate from the substrate. So you can switch on the activation of a cytosolic protein by adding phosphate to it. You can switch off the activation of a cytosolic protein by removing the phosphate from it. So this is how the molecules within our cytoplasms are activated. Switch on means add phosphate, switch off means remove the phosphate. Okay, so that's the basic principle of activation of the intracellular proteins. So we finished with receptor guanylyl cyclase. Now we are coming to gated ion channels. We had seen how the gated ion channels operate when we studied the sodium potassium pump under the function of plasma membrane. So the channels open or close in response to concentration of signal ligand. So there is a signal ligand membrane potential, and the response to this membrane potential, the ion channels open and close. Then there is this adhesion receptors. So regarding the ion channel, let me give you an example of an ion channel, that is acetylcholine receptor ion channel is an example of this mechanism. Then we have this adhesion receptors. In case of the adhesion receptors, as you can see, these receptors binds to molecules in the extracellular matrix. So the receptors are binding to molecules in the extracellular matrix, thus altering its interaction with the cytoskeleton. An example is the integrins illustrate this general type of transduction mechanism. And finally, nuclear receptors. So you can see the hormone binds directly to the, so this is the ligand. It enters, it is binding directly to the nuclear receptors and thus is regulating the expression of specific genes. A beautiful example for this category of receptor function is the hormone estrogen. This is another simplified picture of the types of receptors. Just to tell you that this picture is from Leninger. So when you are asked what are the categories of receptors, stick to this one. So these are the 6 basic category of receptors available, and 1 to 5 are cell surface receptors. 6 is an intracellular receptor. When we are talking, this is another very simplified picture of the signaling receptors we just now discussed. We have a ligand binding receptor. So you can see the ligand binding site. This is ion channel. This is a receptor enzyme. So this can be receptor tyrosine kinases. This can be receptor guanyl cyclases. We have G protein coupled receptors. They are known as GPCR. So these receptors are G protein coupled receptors. You can see that the G protein complex, there's alpha, beta, and gamma subunit is attached to the cytoplasmic end of the receptor. And then we have these intracellular receptors. This we did. These are some more pictures of some receptors. This is a more detailed picture of some receptors. So you can have membrane potential controlling receptors, the voltage gated ion channel, the ligand gated ion channel. Then you can have this receptor serine threonine kinase. By the name kinase, you can understand these receptors basically function by addition of phosphates to their substrates. Then there is this response regulator, response of a cell. Then we have the tyrosine groups, tyrosine group of receptors which act by phosphorylating the tyrosine amino acid on its target proteins. So this includes the receptor tyrosine kinase, the integrins, the receptor kinase ligand, and also the cytokine receptors. Then we have this interesting receptor tyrosine phosphatase. Just as I said, kinase can activate a cytosolic protein by addition of phosphate. Phosphatase can deactivate a cytosolic protein by removal of phosphate. So that's receptor tyrosine phosphate. You see the word tyrosine is being used. So keep that in mind that whenever this receptor is phosphorylating a specific protein, a protein is made up of a lot of amino acids. One such important amino acid is the amino acid tyrosine. Okay. So these receptors actually act by phosphorylating the tyrosine residue or by removing the phosphate from tyrosine residue. When we talk about the ST kinase, that is the serine threonine kinase, then you have to keep it in mind that phosphate is being added to the serine residue or the threonine residue. So depending on to which exact amino acid the phosphate is being added, the receptors accordingly named. Then we have this receptor guanyl cyclase. So this acts by the breakdown of GTP to cGMP. We have some adhesion receptors. So this is the beta catenin group. This is the adhesion receptors, selectin and cadherin. And this particular specific receptor, this is a gene expression receptor. This receptor is associated with the immune system. This is a pattern recognition receptor. I'll talk about that later on again when we have a slide dedicated to toll-like receptor. And this is a cytoplasmic steroid receptor. So these two receptors, they control gene expression. So these are the different types of receptors and a more detailed structural orientation of the receptors. Now coming to a basic signaling process. There are ways in which signals can travel down a cell. A single ligand can bind to its receptor and can initiate two signaling pathways simultaneously. Or two different ligand binds to two receptors and the pathway of signaling might converge into a single pathway. Or two different ligands binds to two different receptors, two signaling pathways have started, but there's a crosstalk between the two signaling pathways. So this is the variety of ways in which a signal is transduced within the cytoplasm. Coming to basic time, this particular picture is from Bruce Albers. So if you see, this is an extracellular signaling molecule. Regarding an extracellular signaling molecule, it binds to the cell receptor. There is a cytoplasmic change occurring in the receptor. The signal is conveyed to a number of proteins. We are having an altered cytoplasmic machinery and altered cell behavior. This is one pathway where the signaling pathway is moving through the cytoplasm and bringing about an output in the cell's response. But there are some signaling molecules that might want to involve the DNA. So the moment you are involving the cell's DNA as a response element, automatically that means you have to bring in transcription and translation because you're involving the DNA. So the DNA will be first transcribed, a particular gene will be first transcribed, and then the gene will be translated, and then only you can get an output. So the moment you are involving DNA is required to generate a response. When we talk about DNA is required to generate a response, keep it in mind that DNA is required to generate a response means the DNA, a portion of a gene will be activated, translated, transcribed. So this is a slow process. So some signaling pathways are very fast that bypass the DNA, involvement of DNA, and the signal moves through the cytoplasm, bringing about an altered output of the cell itself, while some signaling mechanisms are slow, which brings about a response from the DNA. So it takes minutes to hours, it takes seconds to minutes. Now we are coming to the messengers. Whenever we have a signaling molecule, like this is a picture of a cell surface signaling. That is, we are having a cell surface receptor. The ligand is the first messenger. It brings the message to the receptor. Accordingly, the receptor conformation changes, and the signal is then transduced to a number of intermediate molecules or intracellular signaling proteins. So one after another, these intracellular signaling proteins are activated, and they finally might bring about the desired change required in response to the original stimuli or the first message that was brought by the ligand. So the ligand is bringing the original stimuli or the first message, based on which the signal is being transduced, and accordingly we might have an altered metabolism, an altered gene expression, or an altered cell shape or movement. So this is how the signals percolate through the cell. Now we do some detailings of the receptors we studied. So we start with the first category of receptors, the nuclear receptors. As you understand that these receptors on one hand can bind to the ligand, and being nuclear receptors, they are also capable of binding to the DNA. So the majority of nuclear receptors, as you can see, the green portion have DNA binding domain. So some examples of the nuclear receptors have been given here, which includes the cortisol, the estrogen, the progesterone, vitamin D, thyroid hormone, retinoic acid. Currently, more than 48 nuclear receptors are encoded in the human genome, which are, so as I said, these nuclear receptors on one hand can bind to the ligand, and on the other hand can bind to the DNA. So let us look at the structure of a nuclear receptor. So this is how the inactivated nuclear receptor looks. If you look into the receptor, inactivated receptor, it has a DNA binding domain. And in its inactive condition, the DNA binding domain is not exposed. It is clamped shut. So it's shut. And then we have, this is the carboxy terminal domain of the receptor. Remember, the receptor is also a protein. This is amino terminal domain. And this is the transcription activating domain. This is the ligand binding domain. So in case of an inactive receptor, this is how the inactive receptor looks, and there are inhibitory proteins attached to the inactive receptor in such a manner that its DNA binding domain is not exposed. The moment you can see ligand has attached itself to the ligand bind. So this was the ligand binding domain. So the moment the ligand, so this is the red ligand, the ligand comes and attaches to the ligand binding domain, there is a conformational change in the structure of the nuclear receptor. As a result of which you can see the exposure of the DNA binding domain. Now this DNA binding domain can sit on segments of DNA which it identifies. So this is the receptor binding element. So there are response elements to the nuclear receptors. So the DNA binding domain sits on this receptor binding element. Coactivator protein comes and binds to the receptor and transcription of target gene starts. So this is how the nuclear receptor family actually acts. Coming to the categories of cellular receptors on the cell surface, we have a channel linked receptor here. So you can see there are signal molecules binds, the channel opens, and the molecules ions flow through the membrane. We are having an enzyme linked receptor in this B picture. You can see signals are binding and the enzyme is activated. Keep it in mind that when we are talking about enzyme linked receptor, the enzyme binds to the extracellular part of the receptor. And the binding of the enzyme to the extracellular part brings about a change in the cytoplasmic part of the receptor. In no way does the enzyme move into the cell. Then we have G protein coupled receptors. G protein coupled receptors, as I said, when the receptor ligand binding occurs, the G protein molecules which are present on the cytoplasmic side of the receptors are activated, and accordingly they move to activate different enzymes. And one of the receptors, that is intracellular receptors, they may be cytoplasmic or nuclear or may be present in the nucleoplasm. And we saw how this intracellular, I just showed you the mechanism of action of a nuclear receptor. This is again an ion channel coupled receptor. The moment the ligand has attached, the channel has opened up and ions are flowing in. Now coming to the G protein coupled receptor. I was talking about this G protein coupled receptor on and off again. So there are three pictures showing you the mode of action. Let's get by the pictures one by one. See, this is the inactive receptor. This is the inactive G protein complex. And this is the target enzyme that the G protein will activate if the receptor is activated. So there are three parts to it. Now, the signal molecule binds to the inactive receptor, as a result of which the associated G protein is activated, and this activated G protein then activates this neighboring enzyme, which then transduces the signal downstream. Coming to the right picture, this is more of at the molecular level, same receptor, hormone binding to the receptor. We are seeing the three subunits of the G protein, alpha, beta, gamma. The moment the ligand binds with the receptor, you can see the G protein is active. The GTP activated alpha subunit then opens up and moves to activate an enzyme which is present nearby in the cell membrane, which results in the activation of this enzyme. The same structure is shown here in a more detailed manner. Ligand has bound to its receptor. The moment ligand has bound to its receptor, we are having the three subunits of G protein, beta, gamma, and alpha. The GTP is exchanged for GTP. Activated alpha subunit of GTP move downstream to the amplifier enzyme. This enzyme then further transduces the signal downstream. So this is how the G protein acts. I'll show you two pathways in which G protein actually activates the downstream signaling. In the first pathway, as you see, This was the alpha subunit. There is this ligand receptor interaction. The alpha subunit is activated, GTP is attached to it, and it activates a downstream enzyme present in the membrane, which is phospholipase C. The moment phospholipase C is activated, phospholipase C cleaves phosphatidyl inositol bisphosphate to inositol trisphosphate and diacylglycerol. As you can see, IP3, inositol triphosphate, moves down and produces diverse effects. IP3 may also induce the opening of the calcium channels on the endoplasmic reticulum, thereby bringing about diverse effects. This is one way of activation of the G protein via the phospholipase C pathway, or again, similarly, ligand binds to receptor, G protein is activated, the alpha subunit exchanges GDP for GTP, and this time it activates an enzyme, adenylase cyclase. Adenylase cyclase converts adenosine triphosphate to cyclic adenosine monophosphate, and this again starts another pathway of signal transduction. So it's the same G protein. Depending on what kind of extracellular ligand is binding to the receptor, the G protein might once activate phospholipase C, or it might activate adenylate cyclase. So these are GPCRs. Depending on the ligand and the output needed, we saw the activation of two different signaling pathways via the same G protein. Coming to the enzyme coupled receptors, as I said, initially in case of the enzyme coupled receptors, when the receptors are present, they are present as monomers in single form. The moment the enzyme starts moving towards the receptors and they bind to the receptors, you can see receptor dimerization has occurred. The receptors have moved in close, the singles units of the receptors have moved in close proximity to one another. And the movement of these receptors to close proximity to one another, what happens? This activates the catalytic domain on the cytoplasmic surface. So you can see on the cytoplasmic surface, the catalytic domain is activated. Or at times, enzymes might bind and activate an associated enzyme which is attached to the cytoplasmic surface. So we can look at the structure of a enzyme coupled receptors. It has a ligand binding domain, it has a transmembrane domain, and it has a catalytic domain. This picture shows you three categories of traditional enzyme coupled receptors. The first category is the guanylate cyclase. You can see the moment the ligand binds with the enzyme, we are seeing the conversion of GTP to cGMP on the cytoplasmic side. This is the tyrosine kinase receptor. The moment the ligand binds with the tyrosine kinase receptor, we are seeing phosphorylation of tyrosine residues on the substrates or the target proteins. This is the serine threonine kinase receptor. The moment the ligand binds to this receptor, we are seeing the phosphorylation of the serine or the threonine residues on the target substrates or on the receptor itself. As I started when I was discussing about the different categories of receptors, I said you that the signaling cascade, when it travels through the cell, switch on and switch off is important. You switch on a protein, you add phosphate. You switch off a protein, you remove a phosphate. So these are the two classical mechanisms of switching on and switching off of a protein. Let's look into the first one, this one. Just a second. This one. So You see, protein kinase is adding a phosphate to the substrate. The phosphate can be added on the tyrosine residue. It can be added on the threonine residue. It can be added on the serine residue. So the moment the phosphate is being added, you see it's switched on. So this protein is activated. Now I want to deactivate it. My work is done. The signaling cascade has moved through the cell. I don't want these proteins to remain activated. So what happens? The protein phosphatase removes the phosphate and that same protein has become switched off. So kinase phosphatase system is one system that switches on and off a signaling pathway. Another switch is the guanylate cyclase switch. So you have the substrate, you exchange the GTP is exchanged for GDP. We saw in case of the G protein, the alpha subunit is attached with GDP. The moment it got activated, it attached to the GTP. So it switched on. And now I want to get this protein back to its normal state. Simple GTP hydrolysis, the protein is switched off. So remember, whenever there is a signaling transmission occurring through the cytoplasm, the molecules are switched on, and as the signal has passed through the molecule is switched off. These two switches operate at the molecular level, the kinase phosphatase switch and the GTP-GDP switch. So this is an example of a signaling by phosphorylation. As you can see, the ligand has bound to the extracellular end of the receptor. On the transmembrane side, we have the guanylate cyclase. It is using the GTP-GDP switch. So it's converted to cyclic GMP, which activates PKG, and then we have serine phosphorylation or threonine phosphorylation. One signaling pathway might involve both the switches. Keep it in mind, these are not exclusive. One signaling cascade or one signal transmission pathway might involve both the switch according to the need. This is another example of a enzyme coupled receptor function. You see the ligand has attached to the receptor, and on the receptor itself, certain tyrosine, threonine or serine residues are phosphorylated. These phosphorylated sites attract proteins from the cytoplasm. These proteins comes, interacts with these phosphorylated sites and in turn get phosphorylated, and then they carry the message downstream. So when we are talking about signaling via enzyme coupled receptors, you should keep it in mind that there is invariably something going on at the cytoplasmic end of the receptors. The receptors, the amino acids present in the receptors, that is the tyrosine, serine or threonine residues on the receptors may themselves be phosphorylated, thereby asking other proteins to come to their vicinity, and they in turn phosphorylate these neighboring proteins. Or as we saw in this one, it can convert GTP to cGMP and then the signal passes downstream. This is one of a specific category of receptors known as the pattern recognition receptors. These receptors are present on the immune cells of our body. Not all immune cells of our body contain them. I think so you have this basic idea that the immune system of our body are divided into innate immunity and adaptive immunity. Innate immunity is the immunity with which we are born. So certain cells of our body like the macrophages, the dendritic cells, these are the innate immune cells. These cells have these category of receptors. These receptors can recognize certain patterns present on the surface of the microbes. If a bacteria has entered our body, how will an immune cell identify a bacterial cell wall from that of a normal cell? So there are certain patterns which it sees on the surface of the bacterial cell wall. And this pattern tells this immune cell that this is foreign. So the patterns present on this category of variety of pathogens are known as PAMs, pathogen activated molecular patterns. And these receptors recognize these PAMs. And once these receptors recognize these PAMs, they start a lot of downstream signaling cascade in the process. So we restrict our knowledge to PERR to this much for now. We don't want to get into the details of pattern recognition receptors. Now coming, so we saw that a ligand binds to a receptor and the receptor is activated. It can be the activation of a G protein. It can be the activation of a GTP molecule. It can be the activation of certain tyrosine, serine or threonine residues on the receptors, which in turn recruit cytosolic protein and activate their tyrosine, threonine or serine residues. Whatsoever, whenever there is a receptor ligand binding, initially it is a one molecule. One ligand binds to one receptor. But as the signaling moves downstream, you see in each step, more and more molecules are being involved. More and more molecules are being activated. See, it started with one receptor. And then it started with one receptor, and then we are seeing multiple proteins are being activated all together. They in turn activate further proteins. So if you remember, I told you the activation of G protein. The G protein once activated can activate adenyl cyclase, and then it activates cyclic AMP, converts ATP to cyclic AMP. So we see that it started with one receptor, but at the level of cyclic AMP, we are getting multiple amounts of cyclic AMP present in the cell. And multiple cyclic AMP can in turn further activate multiple protein kinases. The moment protein kinases are activated, they add phosphates to a huge amount of target proteins. So in each step, this amplification is occurring. So that started with a simple small receptor, but that one ripple, as it moves down the cytoplasm, has created a huge wave of target proteins which are now activated by addition of phosphates. So whenever there is a signal moving downstream, there is always the amplification of the signal. This is something we started with that one, but that was a much simplified picture. But when talking about signaling, this is a detailed picture. You see ligand receptor binding, multiple proteins interacting, amplification of the signal. The signal might enter into crosstalk, or the signal might involve the DNA. So multiple ways a signal can move, and ultimately can bring about the modulation of the target cell as per the wish of the ligand, because that was the initial stimuli. So this is a beautiful picture. I just wanted to share this picture and to show you that I said you that the first messenger is the ligand itself. But other molecules which are second in line are referred to as second messengers. Some of the very well-known second messengers are calcium, because this is a very important molecule. Calcium is a very, very important molecule. When we did synaptic transmission or neurotransmitter transmission, you remember that unless and until calcium influxes into the presynaptic terminal, the vesicles containing the neurotransmitters are not released. So you can understand calcium helps in mobility of the intracellular moieties. So this is that same G protein picture. So this is the inactivated G protein, ligand binding, GTP activate, alpha subunit of G protein activated. It activates phospholipase C. Phospholipase C breaks down phosphatidylinositol phosphate, PIP to the bisphosphate to IP3-inositol triphosphate, which opens calcium channels. So calcium is one of the important second messengers, because once calcium comes out into the cytoplasm, it now controls a huge variety of cellular activities of the cell. Another important second messenger is the diacylglycerol. This is an important second messenger. It can move downstream and activate another enzyme, protein kinase C. Then phosphatidylinositol bisphosphate, PIP2, is another important second messenger. So nitric oxide, we studied nitric oxide yesterday. And you remember nitric oxide was produced. If you remember, there was a signaling pathway that started, and then only whenever there is the liberation of acetylcholine and acetylcholine receptor complex is activated, then arginine, from arginine nitric oxide is synthesized. So nitric oxide is also an important second messenger. So these are the number of second messengers. And this is in a nutshell what we have done till now. See, these are the signaling receptors. We have the G protein coupled receptors. We have done the G protein extensively, and the G protein coupled receptors respond to neurotransmitters, to hormones. The G protein coupled receptors can act via two pathways. One is it can activate adenylate cyclase, or it can activate phospholipase C gamma. So both these pathways are G protein coupled receptor pathways, and G protein coupled receptors are activated in response to, as you can see, the neurotransmitters and the hormones that follow this pathway. This is a list. This is again the list of neurotransmitters and hormones that follow this pathway. Coming to the signaling receptors, we have this genomic and non-genomic action. Genomic action means you're involving the DNA. So it includes the steroid hormones. This is a rapid action. Sometimes the same hormones might not involve the DNA. In that case, as you can see, it is a G protein mediated activity, and it can involve adenylate cyclase, phospholipase C, or PI3, phosphatidylinositol triphosphate. When we are talking about the growth factors usually prefer the enzyme coupled receptor, follow the pathway of enzyme activated receptors, which we studied. So when we move on to the growth factors, these are the enzyme linked receptors. So that these receptors are of two categories: the receptor tyrosine kinase and the receptor serine threonine kinase. And these receptors on their cytoplasmic end, in case of RTK, have tyrosine residues, which are initially phosphorylated, and these phosphorylated tyrosine residues attracts other proteins to it, and in turn, those proteins which have come to it are phosphorylated on their tyrosine residues, and these are serine threonine kinases. Instead of tyrosine, serine or threonine residues in the cytoplasmic part of the receptor phosphorylated. So the growth factors, the survival factors follow this pathway of receptor activation. Then we have the cytokines. Cytokines are chemical messengers of the immune system. They crosstalk in the immune system, and the cytokines follow the JAK-STAT pathway. I'm not getting into the JAK-STAT pathway today because we will be taking up the JAK-STAT pathway as an individual topic. And finally, we come into the last picture of a signaling class. This is different models of signal transmission. Stimulus A binds to B signal transmitter, simplified. Stimulus A binds to receptor, receptor conformation occurs. Stimulus A binds to B, receptor conformation occurs, and there is a diffusion dependent complex formation. These are different ways of signal transduction, just to give you an idea about signal transduction. This is something I'm teaching you extra to give an idea about signal transduction. In certain times, stimulus A reacts with the receptor to bring about post-transcriptional translational modification, or the stimulus might result in protein degradation. So these happens. So these are the different modes of signal transmission that occurs within a cell. And with this, we come to the end of the basics of our first class of signaling. Next day, we will start with the receptor tyrosine kinase pathway. Just a second.